welcome. We've got more people over here than over here, so I'm looking over here too. Can you see me? Yeah, excellent, excellent. Hi, welcome to this Silicon Slopes Town Hall. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes and a licensed psychologist. We're so glad to have you here and glad to be able to do these on a regular basis where we get to talk about important issues in mental health. Let's go on to that slide. That's me. Go on to the next slide. Okay, today we're going to talk about anxiety and self-talk. So this is just some statistics here. From April 2020 to September 2022, percentage of U.S. respondents who reported anxiety or stress in the last 7 days to 2 weeks was a low of 24.5 and a high of 37.2, around 30%. 3 out of 10 people saying that they had some sort of anxiety or stress. That's probably higher than that, right? And my guess is that everyone in this room knows someone who, either yourself or you know someone closely who struggles with chronic anxiety or chronic stress and really doesn't know how to manage it very well. Some of the things we're going to talk about today is how the brain processes that and how we can use our brains to our advantage to deal with those sorts of things. Your brain is your friend, actually. People say, no, I don't like my brain. No, your brain is your friend. So let's go to the next slide, please. When it comes to anxiety management, oftentimes I get asked whether medication is better or whether therapy is better. And I have a lot of anecdotal evidence. I've treated and evaluated more than 10,000 clients in my career, and I cannot tell you how many times I have talked to someone who's on medications for anxiety and depression, and they say the depression works pretty well, but the anxiety not so great. Most people that I talk to say their anxiety meds don't work as well. There's 2 classifications of anxiety medications. There's the highly addictive kind that make you feel better in about 30 seconds after you take it, and then, which is not prescribed very much because of its potential for addiction. And even then, you're told just to take it as needed. And then there are others like the SSRIs and the SNRIs that they say, take this every day. And those just don't seem to be as effective for people, at least in my experience. You can advance to the next slide. That's why I put the question mark over the medication. I don't know how well anxiety responds to medication all the time. Therapy, anxiety tends to respond very well to therapy because it changes the way you think about things. It changes the way you perceive your circumstance. And as you're able to do that, then you're able to have a different emotional experience. Next slide. So we talk about our brains, and our brains are, for lack of a better word, they're moldable. When they refer to our brains, they use a term called neuroplasticity, which means that your brain can change in shape and form on very, very small levels. And advance to the next one, please. It's kind of like grooves on a record. So if you know about how records work, the way those grooves are cut into that record, when you put a needle on that and amplify it, it plays the music that is literally carved into that vinyl. And if you change that carving, then it changes what's played. It'll either change it so it doesn't sound very good, or you could wipe the whole record clean, and you could put an entire new groove on it, and you could put and have an entirely new music on that as well. Your brain does that. You have to do it. So your brain has like these grooves in it that are playing the music of your life, and sometimes that music is the music of anxiety, and sometimes it's the music of depression. And sometimes we come with that in our lives, but you can go in there and you can change those grooves. It takes a lot of work. Next slide. So before you have any grooves, this is kind of what your brain looks like. It's just kind of like this field, right? And so, and then after you get the grooves, it looks like the next slide. It's this paved road. So let's say you've had a lifetime of anxiety, and you decide today that you are going to stop having anxiety. You say, you know what? I'm going to do something different. And your brain says, okay, and you try that whole day, and nothing really works because it's like trying to walk through that field, and it's difficult. It's not as easy to get through, and your brain says, no, we've been doing anxiety just fine for 20 years. We're not going to stop right now. But if you keep doing it over and over again until your brain, you know what, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to think differently about things. I'm going to change the way that I approach things in my life. Then your brain starts to create little ruts in that road or in that field, and it starts to change it. And eventually, instead of this super highway of anxiety, it could be a super highway of calm. That's what your brain naturally goes to because you've practiced it over and over and over again. And you can go back as well. It just takes consistency. Your brain's never going to respond to something that you do for a day. It's going to say, no, we don't get out the front end loader and the excavator just for one day's worth of change, but we do for a week or a month or a year or 10 years. So just remember that is the things you learn about today. If you go home and you try to apply them today and tonight, they'll work pretty clunkily, and you won't see a lot of change. But if you do it over and over and over again, you start to see change, and that's the good news about it. Okay, 3 good things. One of the things this is the last slide, that helps with anxiety as well is just being grateful, in my opinion. And this is something I found online and multiple sources. The 3 good things. At the end of every day, write down 3 good things that happened to you. Then write down what was your contribution to making them happen. There's always something that you did. Even I was in the right place at the right time. And then the next one, write down what you can do to help them happen again. To me, that's an empowering sort of thing. It's something that says, I have control over my circumstances. We don't have control over everything, but we have control over some things. And so when we take that control and say, what can I do tomorrow to try to recreate some of the good things that happened today, automatically that's going to lift your mood. That's going to give you a little more peace and more satisfaction. So we're so grateful for you being here. Some of the things we do here at Silicon Slopes to emphasize mental health is we have these monthly town halls. We have a mental health podcast called Mental Health Momentum. If you have any questions about the work we're doing with mental health at Silicon Slopes, you can email there, mentalhealth@siliconslopes.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy Vega of Promise to Live. Oh, and one more thing. Oftentimes we talk about sensitive issues here, and I'm sitting in the back all the time. If anyone has anything that comes up that you want to talk about, I'm a licensed psychologist, just come grab me and say, Dr. Morgan, can I talk for just a minute? And absolutely, we'll find a quiet place where you can share your thoughts and feelings. So, and with that, here's Brandy.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Look at it. You get a free lunch and you get free counseling if you need it. That's a $100 value. Yours today for only $9.88 if you want to donate. Thank you guys for being here. My name is Brandy Vega. As he mentioned, I'm the founder of Promise to Live. We've been doing a lot of things. We've been doing a ton of work. We just got back from Hollywood, which was amazing, and I'm going to share that. But before we get started, we have an incredible panel here today. I want to introduce them. We have Justin Olsen from Blomquist Hale Solutions. We have Scott Downs. He's a marriage and family therapist. And we have Tyler Butler from Aspen Counciling. So they're each going to be speaking. Did you enjoy your lunch? Yes. That was from our friends at Costa Vida. We thought it was absolutely delicious. We're going to have her come up and just share for a minute. And after her, we have Tom Telford, the CEO of Levo, a mind care company, just to share a little bit about that. They're one of our sponsors. So please, Costa Vida, come on up. Right up on the blue carpet. Here you go.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Good. So I just want to, first of all, say thank you to Julie and Brandy and all of you that are here today. This is a huge cause and something near and dear to my heart. So prior to Costa Vida, I worked in mental health. I was a client advocate. I was in transformational coaching with young adults and adults. So this is definitely near and dear to my heart. And then I'm thankful to be a part of Costa Vida because I think we can help in a big way. Something I wanted to, quote I wanted to tell you guys is something that I share with a lot of people, but being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they are almost indistinguishable. And so I believe that wholeheartedly. This is something by David W. Augsburger, and really it's just saying some people just need to be heard, and that is enough to make someone feel loved, and that's what you guys are doing here today, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. The food was delicious, and we're trying to work something out for some fundraising opportunities. We appreciate what they're doing, so please show your love to Costa Vida. And now I would like to have Tom Telford come up and just take a couple of minutes to share a little bit about Levo and why this cause and what we do matters.
Thank you, Brandy. Tom Telford with Levo. I am one of the owners. There are 4 other women who own Levo along with me. And I have to admit, my heart is full today, in the room today, in my opinion, in terms of events that we have had here over the last several months. This is probably the most power-driven in terms of those who sit with people in pain on a daily and weekly basis. So to get 4 professionals with Dr. Morgan in the same room at a time, it's a big deal. I say that because I'm married to a therapist. I know what her daily life is like. I know what our lives are like at Levo. I know what Blomquist Hale, who's in the room today. If you're in mental health, you recognize that this cause is incredibly valuable, important, but it's heavy. So I love the message that you shared from Costa Vida, about connecting with people and having a conversation with people. Part of the reason that Levo is involved in this is because, one, we are in mental health. We employ mental health professionals who sit with people who are at a low point in life, many of them. And the people that we employ are professionals. They're licensed to do what they do. They assess, they diagnose, and then they treat people who are in need, specifically with medication or alternative treatments. Medication isn't always the answer. In fact, in a lot of cases, our clinicians are sitting with people and they're trying to get them off medication, which is interesting. You would think, well, everybody's trying to get them on medication. It's actually not true. There's a stigma about that. The ability to assess and diagnose, but sit with people in a compassionate way, this is the work we're in. And so when Promise to Live, is driving this awareness in Hollywood recently, which congratulations to Brandy and her team for being there. This is what it's about. If you really dive into the suicide prevention and awareness cause, we're really trying to connect with people who are in pain. They don't necessarily want to leave. They just want to stop feeling pain. That is the issue. I love this event because it's really about sharing ideas and information and resources. So this month, Levo has a podcast called the Lift and Make Lighter podcast. And I sat with a woman by the name of Anna Lieber. She is the director at Westminster in their mental health counseling program. And Anna is a certified suicidologist. And if you listen to that podcast and you really hear what's going on with her, it's fascinating. What she is doing and the awareness that she's spreading, she trains the trainers. So Anna travels the country, on the weekends and in her free time, which is never. I don't know how she does what she does, but she's literally training those who sit with people who are experiencing extreme suicide ideation. This woman is brilliant. She's knowledgeable. She's very busy. She needs to be here, frankly, at some point. Like these 3 and Dr. Morgan, these are people who do it every day, right? They're experts in this. But the information that she shares about how to connect with people, how to have meaningful conversation, and I love what she said during this episode recently. She said, we need to be better at, as parents and as individuals in our communities, leaders in business, we need to be better at the time that someone divulges to us that they are experiencing suicidal thoughts. We need to learn how to respond instead of react. And I've heard this from my wife for years, but this woman saying to me recently in this podcast, it made me think about me sitting with my own children. If they were to express suicidal thoughts, how would I treat the moment? And to be frank, I do this every day. I employ people. But I took myself there, and my response would be, why are you feeling that way? What's going on with you? What has changed, right? I react because I'm scared. And Anna's feedback in that was, fear is the very thing that is driving people to be suicidal. How would we think we can address fear with fear? But that's hard, right? How do we respond not in fear? And it's in curiosity and in love and in compassion. Tell me how you're feeling. What's going on in your life that makes you feel this way? I don't have that skill, to be frank. I'm not there yet. So I'm glad to be here and be involved listening to other professionals do this. Thank you, Promise to Live. And thank you, these 3 individuals. To get these 3 here, If you know what a therapist's life is like, one, they're in high demand every day, all day, and two, they're fighting to get paid what they're worth, which may sound strange, but they do incredible work, literally the work of saving lives, and I struggle every day to hear how they fight to get paid for the work they do. It's remarkable. So if insurance companies are listening in, step up. What are we doing? Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. One of the things I love the most about Promise to Live is the fact that I get to be surrounded by incredible humans every day. I get to learn from giants, and you know, they say you become like the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. Being surrounded by passionate, incredible, caring, loving people who are actively working day in and day out to make a difference is just, it just means the world to me. I wanted to share, some of you guys know the reason why. So I founded Promise to Live about 3 years ago after I almost lost my child to suicide. And it's been a journey. You know, I got to stand up for a minute earlier today and talk, and I felt like I had a real missed opportunity because I didn't share a lot of what we're actually doing. So this month alone, we have reached over 3 million people with Promise to Live. Thank you. And the reason I say that is because the butterfly effect. Of those 3 million, how many of those people needed to hear a message? When I almost lost my daughter, I was volunteering at the hospital doing spiritual care, and Nobody Dies Alone. I sat with patients for many times who had either tried to take their life, or they had lost someone, or they had a terminal illness or a devastating traumatic injury. And I sat with these patients, but when I sat with my daughter, it was different. You know, and I went and I did a video in my car. I did that for 7 years at the hospital. I'm sitting there looking at my daughter, and we don't know the extent of her damage and if she's going to come out of it, and I'm begging God. And I sat in my car that night, and I just went on my personal page, and I said, I need help. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do. If she lives, where do I go? Where do I put her? How do we navigate this? I'm not an expert. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a single mom at the time. I'm doing the best I can. And that's the story that went viral on social media. That led to NBC reaching out to me and asking me to share, and I did not want to because I'm terrified. Who wants to talk about the worst day of their life, the hardest experience, your biggest failures that you feel? Who wants to talk about that? Anyone in here? Because I'll trade you places. I didn't either, and I told them no when they reached out and said, will you share your story? But then I begged God for a miracle, and I know some of you guys know this story, and he gave me one. And I have my daughter here, and she sent me this text message just this week. You know, I don't get to see her a whole lot because she works, and you know, just I'm 50-50 with her dad. She came home the other night. We sat around. We didn't really do anything important. I was having to work really hard on the TV show that we had coming out. And then we said, okay, forced family fun. So we went and played Cover Your Assets, which is a very fun game. And we're in the other room. We're playing for a little bit. And then we just started play fighting and joking and running around the house. And next thing you know, I'm sprinting like a maniac trying to catch her and tickle her till she pees. And it was really, really fun. And it wasn't a long period of time, but it was something that bonded us. It was that moment of connection. It was that shared experience of just giggling and having fun with your kid. And we went to bed, and I drove her back home the next morning to her dad's house. And she sent me this message the next day when she wasn't with me. She said, Mom, I just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you tonight. I love you so much, and I'm really going to miss you when I move and go to college. I wish I could give you a big hug right now. I love you, Mom. It makes me a little bit emotional because I almost never got this text. I almost never had the opportunity to laugh with her and to joke with her and to watch her as she progresses. She graduated a full year early. She's going to college. I have these experiences. When I shared the story on KSL, I said, check on your people. Ask them if they're suicidal. We saved 2 lives. They reached out. We saved 2 lives, and we reached what, 20, 30, 40,000? I don't even know the numbers. That's what's led to all of this. That's led to the town halls. That led to our 3rd annual show in Hollywood, California, where within the last month, we have reached 3 million people with the Promise to Live message. And I think that that is something that really matters to me at the end of the day, because we've struggled, obviously, to make money. but we've made a difference. And I don't think you can put a price on that. So I wanted to share our Promise to Live theme song. We just wrote this song. I think you guys are going to love it. My dear friend Steve James wrote it. We premiered it in Hollywood. I'm going to email it out, so hopefully you guys registered, but we'll get that and we'll share it. I also want to announce a campaign and ask you guys, I never stand up here and ask anyone to donate or to get involved, but I'm going to do that today. Because after 3 years of putting everything that we have into it, we could use a little bit of support from the community. If you would, please take out your phone, scan the QR code. We're doing a program with 988. So we reached out to 988 globally. 988 is a 911 for mental health. And we said, hey, can we launch a campaign? Donate 988. If everybody in this room was donating $9.88 a month to help us spread 988 so that people know that they can call or text that 24/7, so that we can put the commercials out there, the TV show out there, so that we can do these events. So can you guys do us a favor and just commit to donating $9.88 a month to Promise to Live? That would mean a lot to me. And if you're willing to do that too, would you be willing to maybe share this on your social media? The Promise to Live, for those who don't know, is a promise to reach out for help. We want to be clear about that. It's not a suicide pact. It's a promise that if I'm struggling, I will reach out to a friend, a family member, a trusted resource, or call or text 988. Can I get you guys to make that promise to me right now? Will you raise your hand and say, I promise? I promise. Do you know when you make a promise, you're much more likely to keep it? And do you know that I love you? That I need you? People love you, they need you, you're wanted, the world's better with you in it. So make that promise to live. Support the mission. We have incredible speakers. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to do some Q&A after. So if you have a question, please write it down and submit it. I will share it with them. Negative self-talk. How do we deal with it? I deal with it a lot. Does anyone else in here deal with that? Today we're going to address it, and I'm so thankful. Go ahead and we'll let you kick it off. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thanks for letting me be here. I'm Justin Olsen from Blomquist Hale. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. So to begin with, I want to talk a little bit about anxiety and give you a little bit of stats with that. Go ahead, Sean. So with this, as you can see, there's a lot of anxiety that people have. We have about 19% of the population could be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or is diagnosed. And that's not even just symptoms, that's actually diagnosis. And so if we're talking about people that report anxiety, we're talking, 32%, which most likely is a lot more because I would say everybody in this room experiences some anxiety symptoms from time to time. Our young people experience this even more. We believe they have a lot more symptoms. And even if we're diagnosing, we're about at 32% for an anxiety disorder. This negative self-talk that we're going to talk about today goes right along with that in that, making some anxiety happen, making it worse type of thing. So we really want to try to work through some of these things. So, okay. So I put this picture of this parrot up here. A lot of times when I talk about negative self-talk with people, I have a document that's called the poisonous parrot. And so when I think of negative self-talk, I think about this parrot talking to us and saying these negative things to us. Some of the things that they talk about is it's this internal voice that's always critiquing us, always saying negative things about us, making us feel like, hey, we can't do that. We're not enough. We can't accomplish these things, which makes us feel some anxiety when we try to do something new. So it is a thought pattern that we can get stuck in. Dr. Morgan was talking about our brains can get stuck in these types of things. And so that can really happen whether it's positive or negative. This poisonous parrot or this internal dialogue, is really, it critiques us. It's pretty much a bully. It's telling you can't accomplish that. You're not going to be successful with this type of thing. It speaks a lot in absolutes. You never or you always. And so it makes us think that, hey, there's a lot of black and white in the world. And if the truth is there's a lot more gray. You know, we're never always great at something or always terrible at something. There's a lot of good that we do, and there's some struggles that we have from time to time. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. You can put them all up there. I think there's 4. So one big thing to think about is we have a lot of thoughts going on in our head. 80% of these thoughts are negative, which is pretty interesting. The 8 out of 10 of the things that we think, they're negative. And 95% of the thoughts we have, repetitive. So we keep thinking these negative things over and over, which can be pretty difficult for us. So where does that come from? Why do we have that? Where do we get these negative thoughts? A lot of places. Some of the places to start with is, well, what did we see at home? Growing up, what did our parents say to us? What did our teachers, what did our coaches, what did we see on TV? What did we see in our friends? You know, and like I said, we think about these negative things a little bit more than the positive, and there's a reason for this. So one of the big reasons why there's so much negative in our brain, because our brain is trying to help us, like Dr. Morgan said. It's constantly scanning the world, looking for negative things that could hurt us, that could make us not be alive anymore. And so it's looking for those things that are scary. It's looking for, well, you'd be in danger if you did that, or you might get upset, or that might not work out. So it's looking for all of these negative things that could happen to keep us alive and safe. Some of the problem with that is that's just an alarm. It's saying, hey, this could be a problem, but it's not telling us anything to do about that. And so we have to learn some other skills to help us go through with all of that negativity that could be in our minds. And so we have to learn skills to do something about it. Go ahead, Sean. Okay, so these are 5 things that I talk about with almost every person that I talk to that comes in to meet with me. To me, there's probably there's lots of different skills, but to me there's before skills, before having a lot of these negative situations, before anxiety, before depression, and then there's in the moment. This is before. And so what I want you guys to think about with these 5 is, how am I doing with them? Is there any of them that I need to make a little bit of progress on? So first, sleep. You know, these are things that all of you have heard. They're things that should be easy, but is lifelong and difficult for all of us. So what I'd want you to think about that with that is, usually we're talking 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Why is sleep so important? Well, because it gets our brains ready for the next day. It helps us to, get rest so that we can accomplish the things that we want to. If you want anything in life to be a little bit worse, don't get enough sleep. That will make things a lot worse. So ultimately, getting this sleep is very important. And then we want to think about exercise. And the recommendation is, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So we're talking 150 minutes would be fantastic for our brains, for our bodies, for our mental health, and will reduce anxiety and a lot of these negative thoughts because of this exercise. So there's a fantastic book called Keeping Sharp by Sanjay Gupta, and he talks about what actually helps our brain stay away from this cognitive decline as much as possible. And he brings up all of these things on this list, but he says exercise is the only one that they've studied that they can actually tell really helps our brain to keep off this negative decline because of the functional MRIs. They believe all of these are fantastic and really helpful, but exercise is the one they can really study. So a great book if you're interested in that. Healthy eating. So that doesn't mean that we need to be perfect. That doesn't mean that we only need to eat fruits and vegetables all the time. What it does mean is that we, a majority of the time, need to put pretty good things in our body. And that's a great thing for us to do, mental health-wise, physical-wise. I used to teach a presentation called Powerful Brain, Healthy Body with a nutritionist. And she would always talk about 90% of our serotonin, one of the chemicals that helps us to feel good, is actually produced in our stomach. And so our stomach really talks to our body, talks to our brain. It's our second brain, and it helps communicate how we should feel by what we're putting in it. A couple other things I would tell you to do. I want you to have some people to talk to. So who would I talk to if something good happened? Who would I talk to if something negative happened? I want you to have people in your life that you can look to in the good and the bad, and that really helps us to do a lot better. The last one is doing things that make you happy. Everybody in here has to look for opportunities to do things that makes them happy. That could be exercise, that could be journaling, that could be crocheting, that could be, reading a book. It doesn't matter what it is, it matters that you enjoy it. And so ultimately, those 5 I would talk about with almost all of my clients. There's a very small percentage of people that are doing all of those 5. And so that's kind of a starting spot in if you would like to create this foundation of a great life. Okay. So let's talk about this kind of this pattern and how to, so these are more in the moment type of skills. And for one, I would love for you to start catching what are some of those negative things that I say about myself. What are the things that internal bully, that poisonous parrot says about me? Well, I'm not good enough in this way. I'm not a very good writer. I'm not a good listener. I'm a bad parent. Whatever it is, I want you to start noticing what those things are. And with that, go ahead, Sean, you can put them up there. So this awareness is, for one, going to show you which ones they are, and then you're going to start to be able to challenge them. But we have to know what they are before we challenge them. So if you can, some people will journal, and they'll start this kind of thought log. They'll start writing them down of which ones come up for me. Because remember, we all have them, and a lot of us have a lot of them. And so journaling, other people, these external people, some of our supports are people that we could talk to that would be really beneficial. And then the last one, a therapist would be a great one to talk to. And they can help you to see some of these negative thought patterns that you might have. But first, I'd think about journaling. I'd think about my friends and talking with them. And then on to a therapist would be a great idea. Okay. So this next slide. So as you can see, this lady's doing a pretty good job talking to herself. So she's pretty happy. That's what I want for you guys. To see this exactly. So a couple more skills I want you to think about with this. So this, when we start catching some of those negative thoughts, it would be fantastic for us to say, okay, well, what is a positive thought that can counteract that? What do I really want to believe about that? Some people that I meet with can't go all the way to the positive. Let's talk about a neutral thought. Maybe one that's not as attacking, as negative, but is a little bit more neutral, and then in the future, we can think more about a positive thought. If we can do positive, start there, and that would be fantastic. This self-compassion is, there's not a person in here that's perfect, including myself. We make mistakes, we fail at times, there's things that happen. We have to be patient with ourselves and say, hey, I acknowledge that thing that happened. I made a mistake. I didn't arrive on time. Something happened that made it so that I wasn't successful. Be fair to yourself and say, I'm not going to be 100% every day, but I'm going to do the best that I can with the information that I have. So we have to be patient with ourselves from time to time. The next one is actually acknowledging that negative thought, that bully, that parrot that we're talking about, and be able to think, okay, and actually honor what they're saying. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate you saying that, I never come on time. What happens when there's a bully and we use some positivity with them? Usually that shuts them down because they They don't want to interact. They want you to be upset. They want you to be mad. So if we can say, hey, I appreciate you letting me know, brain. I know, like Dr. Morgan said, you're here to help me. Thanks for letting me know. I understand that, and I'm going to try to do something a little bit different. And I no longer need you to continue to tell me that. And so, acknowledging it and moving on. Last one, for you guys, it'd be thinking about some self-care type of things. Is there anything that can really help me in the moment when I'm having this bully talking to me? What can I do to calm myself down? What can I do that helps? And so that's different for everyone. That could be going for a walk. That could be listening to music. That could be taking a nap. That could be playing a video game. Whatever it is, I would love for you guys to really think, when I'm being negative with myself, when I'm hearing this poisonous parrot, what can I do that helps to calm me down? So thanks for letting me be here, guys.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Brandy. Appreciate it. I'm Scott Downs. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, mental health therapist. I work at Intermountain Healthcare at their family clinics in Orem, and also have a private practice as well. So we're going to talk about anxiety and negative self-talk, and I want to hit on first about anxiety and these two parts of our nervous system quickly. When it comes to the tools that I'm going to talk about, centers around engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the goal, which controls the rest and digest response in our body. That's where the heart rate decreases. That's where we start to feel a sense of calm and relaxed feeling, where anxiety starts to go down or is down. Versus the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, speeds up heart rate, makes things feel really buzzy inside and intense, right? So I'm going to share with you some practical skills that you can utilize both as preventative and during acute situations and as kind of preventative, laying the groundwork to mitigate the impacts of anxiety, depression, and other challenges as well. So these steps or these tools, I want us to think in micro steps, small attempts to engage in these tools, which will equate to massive changes. Go ahead, next slide. So the first thing I want to talk about, low-angle sunlight. There's so much evidence and research out there that shows what low-angle morning sunlight can do to our mental health and to our brain and to our mind. First off, it can increase energy. It suppresses melatonin, so it opens that space up to have more energy. Second, it activates serotonin, the feel-good hormone, right? It gives us a sense of calm, it improves our mood, lowers anxiety. It also sets your circadian rhythm as well. You're outside, the light's coming in first thing in the morning. It's telling your body that when it starts to get dark, it's time to shut down and let the melatonin out and have deeper, more quality, effective sleep, which directly impacts our mental health. This also improves cognition as far as our being functional. It has tremendous impact when we're talking morning sunlight. Evening sunlight, low-angle sunlight is effective. This more so in the morning because of the energy that it can produce. So that's number one. Number two, obviously, exercise. Again, thinking in micro steps. Oftentimes when I share this with patients, they become overwhelmed and frustrated. They're thinking they've got to get a membership at VASA and do all these big diet changes, and we're talking micro steps. And what the American Heart Association has said, all we need, like has been mentioned here before, is 150 minutes a week of exercise that gets our heart pumping more than it is right now. And if you do that, which is about 20 minutes, 22 minutes a day, these are the benefits that you will reap from doing so. Evidence-based, scientifically proven, right? So reduces chronic stress. Walking is an underrated form of exercise. It is so effective. Activates blood flow, reduces blood sugar levels, it'll improve lipid panels and blood work. It sends blood flowing through your body, which has healing properties, and it's going to help with inflammation. Has a direct impact on mental health. You'll think better, feel better, sleep better. And this is amazing too. The research that they did, people who took at least 7,000 steps a day were 50%, at least 50 to 70% less likely to die from any cause than those who walked fewer. That's 7,000 steps, right? So if you're doing more than that, awesome. Next slide. Okay, the next tool that I want to talk about is box breathing or four square breathing. In past town halls here I've listened to, they've talked a little bit about breath work. And this one is my favorite. They're really effective, all of them. This one is my favorite because of how accessible it is and how effective it is. So much effective, so very effective that they train our Navy SEALs on how to do this. So if you think about it, Navy SEALs are in pretty intense situations, right? And if they're teaching them how to do this, something's right. Something's going right with this coping skill, with this tool. They're in obviously very high stressful situations. They're in the red zone. That's the crisis zone. We're not going to be at our best cognitively when we're in the red. So this technique actually helps ground us to get to the green zone so that we're able to function and show up as our best version of ourselves, right? So one of the things that this can do as it relates to negative self-talk is it can dislodge some of that ruminating that can take place when those negative thoughts are just stewing inside our head, because it brings you back to the present. Anxiety is all about the future, right? Anticipatory fears, constant worry, and when we're camped out in that land, that's when the physiological symptoms tend to increase. And doing this breath work can help bring you back to the present where your feet are, to help ground yourself and to leave yourself from the land of anxiety. And so box breathing or four square breathing, you can YouTube this, Google it. It'll show you how to do it. But essentially all you're doing is you're breathing in for 4 seconds. You hold it for 4 seconds. You breathe out for 4, hold for 4, just like a square. And doing that intentionally and in moments of not just when you're anxious, but as a preventative measure, it is super effective. I do it all the time. Did it before this presentation. Okay, next slide. Okay. So when we talk about negative self-talk and anxiety, how they go hand in hand, or can go hand in hand, usually, generally speaking, negative self-talk is an outcropping of something deeper that's happened, such as a rupture in self-worth or self-esteem. Someone has said something to us or done something to us, or something has happened where it's tapped into our insecurities, and that's where our mind starts to play tricks on us, and that negative self-talk starts to creep in. So when we talk about combating this, I'm glad I was in this order because you talked a lot about the cognitive, heady type of stuff, right? Like the thinking errors, the thought distortions that create, the filtering that we do that create that negative self-talk. So I want to talk about moving from that to behavioral activation. Oftentimes I get patients that come in and they say, I'm just not motivated to do those 3 things that I mentioned before. Not motivated to do it. And I'm waiting to be motivated. And what I tell them is, you're going to be waiting a long time. Motivation is not, it doesn't come in a syringe to be injected or float onto you to all of a sudden you're just motivated. It takes a step, a micro step, a behavioral activation to move in that direction, which creates that spark, which creates momentum, which creates motivation, which creates habits, patterns to sustain your mental health. So that's the first thing, is getting to the place where you can take, after doing the heady work, cognitive work, to behaviorally activate, to start and ignite that first spark. So in conclusion, I just want to review. It's important that, again, you look at this as micro steps, right? That will have massive outcomes and results. Behavioral activation is required. Working on resilience. Think of resilience and your self-worth as a muscle. You have to use it or you lose it. If you don't exercise it and put it through the emotional gym, it will atrophy and provide barren soil for negative self-talk to really take root and for anxiety and depression to take root. So in order to work on that self-worth and self-esteem, you have to set up little challenges and exert yourself. And this is where I extend this invitation to you all to take these 3 things that I've talked about and make that your resilience challenge. To incorporate morning sunlight, do some box breathing, do some exercise. And the worst thing that will happen if you do that, based off of what patients have told me, is you'll feel a little bit better. And the majority of them feel a lot better. Anecdotally, that's what they've told me. And the science proves that those things help combat symptoms of anxiety, depression, and so forth. So resilience and mental health hygiene, they need fertile ground in order to establish healthy mental health, right? And that takes behavioral activation. And so I challenge you to take a look at this, take stock, pick the easiest one to start with, and just start moving. We have very stressful jobs. We work indoors a lot. We don't have a lot of sunlight. A lot of jobs are sedentary. Those 3 things will hit all the boxes, and it's casting a net out there to be helpful and effective for a lot of mental health challenges and preventative medicine as well. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Practice some of those box breathing right now. And first off, I'd like to thank for the invitation to present today. So thank you, Brandy, and all others involved for allowing me to participate in this important event and these conversations. I'd like to begin what I have to share with a poem. This poem's been a significant impact in my life, and I believe illustrates well the message I am hoping to try to convey with all of us today. And so it's titled The Race by D.H. Groberg. Quit, give up, you're beaten. Quick remark, that's not the message I'm trying to convey today. Quit, give up, you're beaten. They shout at me and plead. There's just too much against you now, this time you can't succeed. And as I start to hang my head in front of failure's face, my downward fall is broken by the memory of a race. And hope refills my weakened will as I recall that scene, for just the thought of that short race rejuvenates my being. And we can go to the next slide too, thanks. A children's race, young boys, young men, how I remember well. Excitement, sure, but also fear. It wasn't hard to tell. They all lined up so full of hope, each thought to win that race, or tie for first, or if not that, at least take second place. And fathers watched from off the side, each cheering for his son, and each boy hoped to show his dad that he would be the one. The whistle blew and off they went, young hearts and hopes afire. To win and be the hero there was each young boy's desire. And one boy in particular, whose dad was in the crowd, was running near the lead and thought, my dad will be so proud. But as they speeded down the field across a shallow dip, the little boy who thought to win lost his step and slipped. Trying hard to catch himself, his hands flew out to brace, and mid the laughter of the crowd, he fell flat on his face. So down he fell, and with him hope. He couldn't win it now. Embarrassed, sad, he only wished to disappear somehow. But as he fell, his dad stood up and showed his anxious face, which to the boy so clearly said, get up and win the race. He quickly rose, no damage done, behind a bit, that's all, and ran with all his mind and might to make up for his fall. So anxious to restore himself, to catch up and to win, his mind went faster than his legs. He slipped and fell again. He wished then he had quit before, with only one disgrace. I'm hopeless as a runner now. I shouldn't try to race. But in the laughing crowd he searched and found his father's face, that steady look which said again, get up and win the race. So up he jumped to try again, 10 yards behind the last. If I'm to gain those yards, he thought, I've got to move real fast. Exerting everything he had, he regained 8 or 10, but trying so hard to catch the lead, he slipped and fell again. Defeat, he laid there silently, a tear dropped from his eye. There's no sense running anymore. 3 strikes, I'm out. Why try? The will to rise had disappeared. All hope had fled away. So far behind, so error-prone, a loser all the way. I've lost, so what's the use, he thought. I'll live with my disgrace. But then he thought about his dad, who'd soon he'd have to face. Get up, an echo sounded low. Get up and take your place. You were not meant for failure here. Get up and win the race. With borrowed will, get up, it said. You haven't lost at all. For winning is no more than this. It's to rise each time you fall. So up he rose to run once more, and with a new commit, he resolved that win or lose, at least he wouldn't quit. So far behind the others now, the most he'd ever been, still he gave it all he had and ran as though to win. 3 times he'd fallen stumbling, 3 times he rose again. Too far behind to hope to win, he still ran to the end. They cheered the winning runner as he crossed the line first place. Head high and proud and happy, no falling, no disgrace. But when the fallen youngster crossed the line last place, the crowd gave him the greater cheer for finishing the race. And even though he came in last with head bowed low and proud, you would have thought he'd won the race to listen to the crowd. And to his dad he sadly said, I didn't do too well. To me you won, his father said. You rose each time you fell. And now when things seem dark and hard and difficult to face, the memory of that little boy helps me win my race. For all of life is like that race, with ups and downs and all you have to do to win is rise each time you fall. Not a very good juggler with the papers. A couple things that stood out to me in reading that this go around was the audience, the laughter of the crowd. Who does that to a little boy? The tribs. But a couple of other things that stood out to me. One is this young boy and the other individuals that wanted to make their father proud, wanted to give it their best effort to be successful. And how many of us can relate to that? How many of us want to do a good job in whatever it is that we're doing, be it a parent or a spouse, in a relationship, in a career? We have this drive to do well. I haven't met anyone yet that has a drive to not do well. If you've met, let's talk. I'd love to meet this person because I think that would help reduce anxiety. The other thing that stood out to me in this poem is, like this little boy, I think we too can relate in the sense that we experience falls. We trip. And when that happens, we are exposed to a threat of the first thing, of feeling like we want to be successful, we want to make those we care about proud, or make a change or make a difference in the world. And so when we're exposed to these threats by mistakes or shortcomings or failings, anxiety comes into the rescue. And you can go into the next slide, thanks. So with anxiety, it brings a tool bag of negative self-talk. And that tool bag is saying, hey, I'm here to make sure that you don't feel embarrassed anymore. I'm here to make sure that you don't get hurt anymore. Now, the problem with some of these negative self-talk statements is they're just not so helpful. It's almost similar like a husband trying to fix his wife's problems and she just wants to share how she feels. Doesn't help that much, but the intent's there. And so, what can we do with some of these thoughts? The next slide, please.
Next slide.
Is taking the negative self-talk that we have and flipping the script. And one way we can go about doing this is the next slide, please, is to catch it, check it, and change it. And we're going to use 3 different areas to help us do this by using the catch it, check it, change it method. Some of what's already been shared. But this is a simple and easy way for us to remember when we find ourselves in those stumblings and that negative self-talk is there trying to keep us safe or protected, even if it's unhelpful. So the first one is keep comparisons in check. The little boy in the poem was comparing himself to the other kids in the race. Other kids are ahead of him. He's not going to win. And how can many of us relate to that as well, where we're comparing ourselves to our neighbor, or we're comparing ourselves to a friend, or someone at a religious institution, or maybe it's in the place of work, or us as a parent, or as a spouse, where we make these comparisons, and they're not so helpful. So something we can do is to catch it. Catch when we're making these comparisons with others. Check the validity of that comparison. Is it reasonable and fair with the assessment and check that we're making? And then change to compare ourselves to ourselves. How am I doing today versus yesterday? How am I doing today versus a month ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago? You're going to find way more motivation and encouragement to propel forward and address whatever's going on in front of you if you can compare yourself to yourself versus others. So keep comparisons in check. Next one is change the narrative and the meaning. I love in this story where the little boy, his goal is to win the race, and to change the meaning of what winning is to rise each time you fall, helps us be able to catch, check, and change when we might find ourselves in situations where we're telling ourselves a single story narrative. This is who I am. These are the negative self-talks of how I see myself and what I think myself as. Change the story. What are some other experiences in your life that illustrate that you've accomplished, been achieved things, have relationships with others, show that you've been determined, dedicated, loving, kind. Find some of these other stories that sometimes get ignored because we become hyperfixated on the single story narrative. And then lastly, catch, check, and change the negative self-talk directly. When you are having negative self-talk, catch that. Check the validity of it. Is it true that I'm a failure? And then how can we change that? By finding evidence of things in our life that reflect something more positive. I struggled with a negative self-talk of thinking that school wasn't in the cards for me. I struggled in school, got bad grades. In college, struggled, so I quit. It took me over 10 years before I decided to go back to school and get 3 degrees through positive affirmations. I told myself I can do hard things despite still feeling anxiety. We can do that too. Just because we're feeling anxious doesn't invalidate the fact that we are also capable of having something positive to tell ourselves in those situations to catch, check, and change. So next slide. So lastly, just a reminder to get up and win our race, that no one here is lost at all. For winning is no more than this, it's to rise each time we fall. And then lastly, the last thing I invite all of us to do is to practice kindness. just practice kindness. Don't be the laughing crowd. Don't be the evidence that someone's searching for to confirm their negative thinking. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. And we'll just make the change that we're all seeking, hoping for. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Did you guys learn some useful tools today? This was really, really great information. And, you know, I told somebody last week during a hard conversation that comparison is the thief of joy. I didn't feel that way when I was watching Hoarders, though. Looking around my house, all of a sudden I felt so happy that I was a lot more tidy than I was giving myself credit for. I think sometimes it's all in how we look at the picture. I was having a hard day, hard week. We've all been, you know, we're all going through something. Nobody knows. So I love the choose kindness, give grace, and lead with love where we can. But I was complaining a little bit last night. It was a long day. I was doing interviews. I was working with doctors. We're working on our TV show. And so, you know, I've been doing 16, 18-hour days, almost nonstop for a few weeks, burnout a little bit. And, you know, people were saying, well, how's it going? I'm like, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm overworked. I'm overwhelmed. I'm, you know, all these things. And then I started thinking, I had just gone through some of these PowerPoints. And I have the ability to change the narrative. I have the ability to check it. And so I got in the shower last night, and as the water was running, I thought, how blessed am I? I got to do these incredible interviews today. I had people show up who have so much knowledge, who want to contribute. I get to go and share stories with people, and we get to make a difference, and I get these messages. And I think a lot of it is just how we frame that negative self-talk. I shared a little while back, I think we're all critical. I mean, I stand up here, I'm sitting here trying to not have negative self-talk, thinking, gosh, I didn't say that right. I should have done this different. I should have done that better. I missed an opportunity. You know, whatever it is, we all have these thoughts. And over the work that we do is sometimes hard, and nobody's immune from it. And I was thinking a while back that somebody didn't like me. You know, I just thought, oh, that lady doesn't really like me. She's so cool. I bet her life is really cool. She's got a great job. She's living the dream. And I'm nobody to her. She doesn't return my stuff. And I'm having all these feelings, and I'm telling myself and feeding myself these lies. And it was literally like within a week, she posted this big social media write-up of how much she looks up to me and how amazing I am. And I was blown out of the water because I had sat there and told myself that I wasn't good enough, that she didn't like me, that I'm nobody to her. And I just thought, why would I do that? Why do we do that? You ask a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, they think they're amazing. They're superheroes. They're like, I'm really cute. I'm the smartest person here. I'm great. Everybody loves me. And so after this happened, I thought to myself, how many of us do that all the time? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not cute enough. I'm not. They don't. Why? Why? Check it, change it. What? Catch it, check it, change it. I love that. Did you guys write it down? Catch it, check it, change it. So I caught that when I saw it. I was like, what in the world? She likes me? Oh, she likes me. And I decided to try to flip my switch. And so now I just go around assuming you guys all love me. You think I'm amazing. You want to be my friend. You want to work with me. It's great. It's nothing personal. Like, it's all good. And since I've started thinking that way, it's been a lot better. Because sometimes, you know, the way people treat you is a reflection of what they're going through in that moment. It's their stress levels. I mean, sometimes people reach out to me and I just give them a thumbs up. And I don't want them to read into it, wow, she can't even reply to me. It's like, no, it just is what it is. So one of the things that I want to take away from this is catch it, check it, change it. You're amazing. You're loved. Get those negative thoughts out of your head and plant it with, I'm awesome. Who wouldn't want to be my friend? Who wouldn't want to do that? Assume everybody loves you and likes you and wants to be around you. When those voices are coming and you're thinking, oh, I should have. And I was like, I did the best I could at that moment. And I'm proud of myself for getting up, because it's scary to be up here. It's hard to wake up every day and do the things that you do. So thank you for being you. Thank you for doing the things you do. Thank you to our experts who had incredible insight, and for the hard work every day. And there's a lot of amazing people in this audience who go to work every day and you're dealing with people. Thank you. I appreciate that. Did anybody have questions?
There's one question.
Okay, we got a question. If you guys have a question that you want to submit, write it down, give it to Mike, and we'll ask this question. So, okay, low angle sunlight. How long should you be in the sun to get the biggest benefit?
Research says about 15 to 30 minutes. So you can really get a double whammy of wellness and goodness if you combine 30 minutes of a walk of exercise in early morning sunlight. It's a double whammy. But yeah, 15 to 30 minutes.
Somebody in this audience gives me grief because they know my sleep habits. And being on my phone at night. You know, it's like, okay, we have a routine, it's really fun. We play Yahtzee on our phones at night, and I usually win, it's great. And after we play Yahtzee, you know, say our prayers, whatever, go to sleep. And then he's like, don't get on your phone, don't get on your phone. And I get on my phone because I have to check, did I get that PowerPoint in? Did I get this done? Did I get that done? How bad is it really?
So one way it's been described to me, that take it for what it's worth. If you remember maybe having an LCD TV or a plasma TV, and it's stuck on pause, and you turn it off, and you can see the burn-in image still. Mm-hmm. I've heard that when you're on your phone and you turn it off, your brain's still activated from that activity of the blue light, of what you saw, what you've read, what you're doing. And that's why they suggest, one of the reasons why they suggest to turn off the technology 2 hours, an hour or two before you go to bed, so that your brain can wind down and just kind of chill out. And when we jump back on it, it just kind of reboots it again. It's like a battery pack jump, right? So.
Okay, I mean, I hear ya. I hear ya. No, it's like I'm thinking of the old commercials with the easy button, right? Like that was easy. I wish there was an off button, because I'd like to install that right here. Do we have any other questions from the audience for our experts? Okay, all right. Mike, why don't you read the question? This is Mike Kazarian. If you don't know him, come up to the stage. He's on our board. He's amazing. He and Julie. Step on up. You got to be in the light. Come to the light. This is good for you too.
Read this person's writing. How can you help others to deploy the deep breathing during a panic attack? Model it for them, and model it for them. Tell them you are going to start breathing and invite them to join you? ?
Okay. All right. So let's say you're in the middle of a struggle. How should you do the deep breathing? And I know, like, there's different things. Dr. Condi left. Brandon was here. He had to leave. But he came and he modeled for me about doing the belly breathing. And he did this for us a couple of months ago, for those of you that were here. Sometimes when I'm laying in bed and not on my phone, I'm trying to breathe and see how I can kind of slow things down. But it's a little bit, I find it frustrating. I don't know if I'm kind of doing it wrong because I'm an overthinker, but can you guys, maybe one of you, demonstrate how this would be best utilized if somebody's actively having an attack or a panic attack and you're struggling to breathe? Not all three at once, though.
One thing that I might even think about before the breathing is maybe even using your 5 senses. And so just noticing anything. Noticing how your pants or your blanket or how that feels on your fingers. Is there any type of smell that I'm having? You know, is there any type of taste? What could I hear? You know, and so using any of those senses might be able to calm you down enough to be able to do some of the deep breathing that you'd need to do. One of you guys can tell about the breathing.
Well, so the question in regards to how to help somebody during a panic attack. So yeah, you can model that with them, and kind of coach them and be present with them. taking a step backwards, it's also very effective for that individual, if it's a child, if it's their spouse, is to kind of front load and forecast preventative measures of like, okay, let's try to catch ourselves when we're maybe leaving the green zone into the yellow. That's where we can try to do some self-care and box breathing. It's going to be more effective, so it's harder to come down from the red to the green. So that's one thing, but also to remind them too in the coaching that nobody that I know of has died as a result of a panic attack, right? They feel like they're going to die. It feels like impending doom is happening. And so to remind them of that. Now, when this happens again, you're going to be safe. You're going to be okay. And it's like a wave. It's going to hit you really hard. And just like waves, they eventually what? Crash. You had a panic attack 2 weeks ago. You survived it, right? It's kind of feeding them some confidence of like, okay, got it. I'm taking away some of the oxygen from the power that it used to have over me and sucking it away to be more preventative and lessen the intensity. And then when it happens, it's letting them know this is what I'm going to do. You're going to respond to my coaching. We're going to do some deep breathing, 4-square breathing, whatever it is that's most effective for you. And if that doesn't work, engaging in the 5 senses. Find 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, taste, whatever, right? And that can really engage the parasympathetic nervous system to start activating to calm the mind and the body down.
I think all that's great. And what else I would add to that is, so I have 4 kids, and I got a notification on Parent Square this last week about them practicing a drill if someone were to come into the building that shouldn't be there. And I think that's important for all of us. So when anxiety peaks or we experience a panic attack, that thinking part of the brain in a lot of ways kind of goes offline, and we just want to survive. And so then it can be hard in those moments to try to process what we're experiencing and apply some of these tools. And so something that can help us, just like my kids practice in school, what if this danger happens, we practice so we know what to do. And so when we're outside of crisis situations, practice the breathing every day. I know it sounds kind of interesting, but practice breathing every single day. Train and familiarize to your brain that this is something you can do to help yourself, and then when that crisis situation does present itself, your brain's more apt to recall that information because it's something you've been practicing over and over and over.
Well, I'm no doctor, but I play one on TV, and so I've got an opinion too, and I have a microphone. For me, I think sometimes just if I've been with somebody, if my kids are struggling, if I'm with somebody who's having a hard time, it's just in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just take a big, deep breath, just pause for a minute, and blowing it out, it kind of just lets them reset when maybe you can't quite get into the box breathing. It's like calm down enough to just get a big, deep breath in and blow it out through your mouth. And in addition to the 5 senses, when I'm doing that, or when I've been with one of my kids who's really struggling, or a friend, it's like I'm holding their hand. You're okay. When I get home and I've had a hard day, he knows there's been times we have puppies. I'm like, I need puppy therapy. Or I need my dog on the lap. I need something soft. I just need to sit there. I go put my feet in the grass. I go ground. It's just something to get me out of that for a moment. And I love what I've been hearing so much of, which is gratitude. Pick your 3 things. And that's what I was doing last night. I'm like, okay, while this is hard, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for this. And then it kind of shifted. So my mood went from here all the way up to life's pretty good. We have another question?
Yeah, this is a good question, too.
We only take good questions. I'm sorry. Leave your bad questions at home.
Yeah, those are all bad. So.
Detail more in the after moment how to help when someone announces ending their life and what to do the next day. So this is a tricky one. I know we kind of addressed it a little bit, but if somebody comes to you, at least as I understand this, and they say, I don't want to live anymore. What do you do in the moment and what should you do next? And briefly, before the experts answer, we did an activation with MTV. They have a thing called ASK, A-S-K. It's acknowledge, it's support, it's keep in touch. You acknowledge that they have it. You are just listening and comforting, and then you support them. What can I do? I hear you. And then just keep checking on them. That's one thing. Ask, seek, acknowledge. You don't have to be an expert, but I think they want an expert opinion, and that's you three, not me here.
In that moment can be kind of stressful for us to hear that, especially if it's somebody that we really care about. I think one of the first things to do is to calm yourself down and to not jump to conclusions of, well, what did I do wrong? You know, I'm going to lose this person. You know, think of all the things in the future. It's more about try to be in the moment and think, how can I care for them? Thank them for telling you that they're having this difficulty, and be able to, you know, you can explore that with them a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that. You know, that I'm sorry that you're going through this. That can be really difficult. You want to make it seem like you care and you're empathetic about what's happening to them. Not that they're making your life harder or that this is a really, really terrible thing. It's more, I care for you. I want to help you. Tell me a little bit about what's going on. To do that, we have to calm ourselves down to be able to do that, especially if it's somebody that's real important to us.
Just to add to that, that acronym ASK is a best practice, and also to ask them directly, do you have access to a firearm? Do you have access to medication? Can I hold on to that while you're during this time that you're struggling? Temporarily, can I hold on to that? Or do you have somebody that you could lock those things up? Unfortunately, we've been pegged as the suicide belt in the Intermountain West. And one of the most lethal means of suicide is firearms. So that would be the first thing that I would ask is, do you have firearms? Do you have access to firearms? And if so, take that. And then it's rallying the support, right? And mobilizing immediately. And if you go overboard with that support, you probably saved a life, right? That's okay. You're hearing from professionals. If you do that, that's good for you, right? Under support, under communicate, there's risk there, right? And so one of the things that you can have in your pocket at all times is, hey, while we try to figure this out, why don't you download and open up Safe Utah app right there, and they can get in contact with somebody right away, a licensed therapist, and call 988, right? That's another. And then following up the next, making sure that they have support, letting family members know, letting other people know in their close circles, like, hey, this was what was communicated to me. And if that burns a bridge, a relationship, my opinion, so be it. You probably saved a life, right? That's just the assumption you have to make. You're saving a life. So it's being active, getting them help, getting them support, ask for firearms, make sure that they don't have access to them, and getting support with you to help support them, if that makes sense.
I'm thinking of Reba McEntire. What do you say in a moment like this? And if you don't know what to say, that's okay. Maybe your role in that moment too could just be listen by tell me more. Tell me more. I like the quote in Avatar, the movie's Avatar, I see you. I think it's important to help an individual who might be in this mental state or emotional state to know that they matter, that someone sees them, that someone sees their hurt. And so we don't need to be quick to say something flowery or optimistic or positive, but just tell me more. Let me see you. And then again, follow them through with some of these other recommendations.
Well, as a founder of Promise to Live, I think one of the things that resonates for me is I try to get people to make a promise to me. Promise if you feel this way that you'll reach out. Promise you'll get help. Promise you'll talk to somebody. Promise that, you'll try to find resources. Because oftentimes we don't love ourselves enough, or we're in such a dark place. But if you ask me to make that promise to get help or to reach out to somebody, I'm going to think about that. When I don't care about myself, I'm going to think, well, I made a promise, and what is the power of a promise? And there's been studies out there that show people who make a promise are up to 60% more likely to keep it. I think that's pretty powerful, and I've asked several of my friends in this state, and we've had a lot of other people who had loved ones struggling say, will you promise to reach out? If you get to this point, if you're feeling this way, will you promise to call me, 988? And you can't take the burden on. Sometimes we're afraid to ask the question because if we get the answer, it's like, well, how do we respond? And now am I responsible if anything happens? You're not. Like, just love them, do the best you can, let them know about resources, but checking in, just checking in and listening to that little voice that says, check on Tom. Maybe you should call or text him. If you're sitting here right now and somebody comes to mind who you should check in, send them a love note. Mike, did I send you a love note this week?
You did. You did. It was very nice. Thank you.
I did, and you know, well, you know, sometimes we sit there and we think about gratitude, and that's great, but what about if you share that gratitude with the people you're thinking about? You know, let them know in that moment, I am so thankful that you guys came, that you took your time, that you scheduled around to come and contribute to this. I'm thankful for the work you do. So sharing gratitude is not just good for you, it's good for them. And you don't have to be a doctor, and you don't have to solve the problems, you don't have to cure everything. You just have to be there and let them know that they're loved. Question? Yeah.
Yeah, a question, you know, I think that Scott and Tyler, you alluded to something together, all of you did collectively, but there's such a drove societally in one topic that you got into, and thank you, Brandy. And I want you to just double click on this a little bit, if you don't mind. Scott alluded to this, this idea of motivation and the connection with motivation and anxiety. You know, in the therapy marketplace today, or the, you know, in the therapy world, I feel like there are droves of late teens and early 20-year-olds. Parents are almost dropping them off and saying, you're going to therapy because you're unmotivated. And how that message of, you know, motivation, the lack thereof, they're spending a lot of time looking at these incredible business. I mean, this is right. We're in the core of like startup land. So you've got 18-year-olds who can't figure out how to earn a Lambo and wear Gucci every day, and their parents think they're unmotivated, and they're highly anxious. So can you just talk about that a little bit? The connection from motivation or lack thereof and the anxiousness that goes along with that.
Yeah, that anxiousness has probably evolved over time to a point where they feel very comfortable in that cocoon of avoidance that they've placed themselves in. And so to unravel that and to help them come out of that cocoon takes a lot of work and time to break things down in a way that are micro steps, like I hit on, right? And finding the very small windows of opportunity to help them capture some of that motivation through things that they actually want to do that doesn't create a high level of being overwhelmed and stressed and anxious, because they're not lazy. That's not what it comes down to. For whatever reason, a lot of these young adults that I've seen in my practice and at the clinics have been riddled with anxiety, self-doubt, negative self-talk, and that can't just be unraveled within a couple sessions or pep talks, right? They need some very strategic, intentional therapeutic support that breaks things down in a very bite-sized, attainable, action-oriented goals that they can look at and go, I can do this. I'm going to get up and apply for one job this week. That is a spark that could help create some motivation and momentum into now going to a job interview and eventually getting a job. And it might not be the job that he or she wants, or that the parents want, but it's a start. It's that momentum and building on that. And of course, every situation is different and needs are different, but that's oftentimes what I see with young adults is that they don't come to me just lazy. They're hurting, they're struggling, they're overwhelmed, and they just need a quiet space to kind of look at what they want to do and break it down in a way that's manageable for them.
To add to that, I think of a flower or any kind of plant. You know, sometimes with motivation, we expect the result before the planting. You know, we expect a flower to bloom before the planting. I think sometimes with motivation, action precedes the feeling of motivation. And so during one of my Instagram scrolling, I had come across something that stated, I want to do this, then do it. And then there was another section that said, I want to do this, but I'm scared. And then it said, then do it scared. And I think sometimes we allow emotions to make us believe or think that we can't do something, and then it prevents us from taking that actionary step, which then motivation can then build off of. But I can do something scared and know that that's okay, and I will be okay doing that. And then from that action step, regardless of how small, motivation then has something to build and grow from.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I like what everybody said. I think that with that, remember, our brains are telling us a lot of negative things. You know, you're not going to be successful with that. You know, even if you try, you know, you're not going to be successful in school. It's going to be too hard. That's not going to matter. That's not enough. And so ultimately it is breaking it down into these really small steps of, well, what's the next right step, you know, that can help you to get to where you want to be. Sometimes these goals, if we want to lose 50 pounds, we're not losing 50 pounds tomorrow. But we can do some actions that's going to help us to get to where we want. What is that little step that's going to be able to help you do that? You know, your brain's telling you you're not going to be able to do this big thing, but what's that small thing that you might be able to accomplish or really work on? And then let's build upon that. You know, it talks about Instagram. Well, I've seen this little reel that would say, you know, it shows two different people. It shows one person that's like halfway through all of these steps, and the steps are really small. But then there's another person on the right that only has 5 steps, but every step's really big, and they're at the very bottom because the steps are so hard to obtain. If we go those little tiny steps, ultimately we're going to build up to what we want. They're going to be smaller steps than this huge step that we think is going to get us that car or that job or that watch or whatever it is.
Thank you so much. Let's give them another round of applause. I appreciate you guys all being here today. If you have additional questions, we'll probably be sticking around for just a few minutes. I want to share our next calendar, and I also want to agree with that. And whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And we have tried to tell our son and ourselves to eliminate the word can't. Stop saying it. I can't do that. Why? Well, yeah, you can, but how? How? So I would challenge you guys to stop saying that. You're an American, not an Americant, okay? That's what I'm saying. So you can, and try to eliminate that word and believe in yourself when you're doing it. Please mark your calendars for our next town hall. The following one is October 17th, and then we have November 21st and December 5th. So we'll be sending out invitations for that. Please mark your calendars. Make sure that you share it. Go online if you will. Make the promise to live. Share it. And this will also be posted on YouTube. A huge thank you to Clint Betts, Dave Meekum, and the entire team at Silicon Slopes for partnering with us, for sharing this information. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, as well, and to the Promise to Live team. This video will be available online on YouTube for you to view and to share, because I think there's a lot of people who could benefit. So thank you again. Appreciate you for coming.